conference room was ice cold, and I loved it that way. Cold kept people sharp, kept them focused. I sat at the head of the long glass table, my navy blazer perfectly pressed, my expression neutral and professional. Across from me, my HR director, Nicole, shuffled through candidate files while our operations manager, Felipe, checked his watch. We were interviewing for the senior marketing coordinator position, a role that paid $85,000 annually with full benefits. 12 candidates had made it to the final round. We had seen 11 of them over the past 3 days. The 12th candidate was running late. Should we start without her? Nicole asked, glancing at the door. I checked my phone, already knowing exactly who was about to walk through that door. Give her 5 more minutes. Traffic can be unpredictable. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my face remained perfectly calm. I had practiced this expression for 6 weeks, ever since I had first seen Claudia Brennan's name on the application list. 6 weeks of preparation, 6 weeks of planning, 6 weeks of imagining this exact moment. The door opened. Claudia walked in, and time seemed to slow. She wore a burgundy dress and heels that clicked against the hardwood floor. Her dark hair was styled in perfect waves. Her makeup was flawless. She looked confident, poised, successful. Everything she had pretended to be when we were friends. Everything she was not. Our eyes met. I watched the color drain from her face. Her confident stride faltered for just a moment. A stumble so brief that Nicole and Felipe probably didn't notice. But I noticed. I noticed everything. Good morning, I said, my voice steady and professional. You must be Claudia Brennan. Please have a seat. She stood frozen in the doorway, her mouth slightly open. I could see the panic in her eyes, the desperate mental calculations happening behind her frozen smile. Ms. Brennan? Nicole prompted. Please sit down so we can begin. Claudia moved robotically to the chair across from me. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down her portfolio. She tried to meet my eyes again, but I was already looking down at her resume, my expression completely neutral. Thank you for coming in today, I continued. I'm Vanessa Torres, CEO of Apex Digital Solutions. This is Nicole Chen from HR and Felipe Rodriguez from Operations. I watched her process the information. CEO. I was the CEO. The last time she had seen me, I had been an assistant director, struggling to make rent while paying her bills. Now, I sat at the head of the table, deciding her professional fate. The irony was delicious. Let's begin, I said, leaning back in my chair. Tell us about yourself, Claudia. What makes you qualified for this position? Her voice cracked when she first spoke. I have 7 years of experience in digital marketing. My expertise includes social media strategy, content creation, and campaign management. Impressive, I said, jotting notes on my tablet. And I see you were previously employed at Sterling Media Group. Can you tell us why you left that position? Claudia swallowed hard. They downsized. Budget cuts. I nodded slowly, even though I knew the truth. Sterling Media hadn't downsized. Claudia had been fired for repeatedly missing deadlines and showing up late. I had called them myself to verify, using a trusted contact in their HR department. That must have been difficult, I said, my tone sympathetic. How long were you unemployed between positions? About 18 months. 18 months, I repeated, writing it down. That's quite a gap. What did you do during that time? She shifted in her seat. I was taking time to reassess my career goals, doing some freelance work. Another lie. She had been living off money borrowed from friends. Money she never intended to repay. Money like the $15,000 she had taken from me. But I didn't say that. Not yet. Instead, I smiled. We value honesty and integrity here at Apex Digital Solutions. Those qualities are non-negotiable. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Would you say you embody those qualities, Claudia? She met my eyes then, really looked at me, and I let her see past my professional mask for just a fraction of a second. Let her see the steel beneath. Let her understand that this was not a coincidence, not an accident, not luck. This was calculated. Yes, she whispered. I would say that. Wonderful, I said, my smile widening. Let's continue. 2 years earlier, Claudia and I had been inseparable. We had met at a networking event for young professionals, one of those awkward mixers where everyone clutched wine glasses and exchanged business cards they would never use. I had been 26, working as an assistant director at a mid-sized marketing firm, ambitious but struggling with student loan debt. Claudia had been 28, charming and confident, telling stories about her fabulous job at Sterling Media Group. She had approached me first. I love your earrings, she had said, gesturing to the simple silver hoops I wore. Very understated. So many women here are trying too hard. I had laughed. Thanks. I'm Vanessa. Claudia, let's ditch this boring mixer and get real food. I know a place. That night, over Thai food and cheap wine, we had bonded over shared frustrations about corporate politics, terrible bosses, and the struggle of being women in male-dominated industries. She had been funny, relatable, warm. She had told me about her difficult childhood, her absent father, her mother who struggled with addiction. I've had to fight for everything I have, she had said, her eyes glistening with emotion. But I'm making it. I'm finally making it. I had admired her resilience. I had thought I found a real friend. Over the next year, we had become close. We met for lunch twice a week. We texted constantly. We celebrated each other's wins and commiserated over setbacks. When I got promoted to director, she had been the first person I called. When her car broke down, I had driven her to work for 3 weeks straight. That's what friends did, I had thought. They showed up for each other. The problems started subtly. Claudia began borrowing small amounts of money. $20 here, $50 there. She always promised to pay me back next week, next month. Whenever her paycheck came through, the amounts grew larger. $100 for groceries, $200 for car repairs, $500 for rent when she was short this month. I had kept a mental tally at first, but eventually stopped. Friends didn't keep score, I had told myself. When Claudia paid me back, which she surely would, we would settle everything at once. Then came the emergency. Claudia had called me crying on a Tuesday night, her voice thick with panic. Vanessa, I need your help. Please, I'm about to be evicted. I had rushed to her apartment. She had been sitting on her couch in sweatpants, mascara streaking her face, surrounded by overdue bills and eviction notices. I fell behind on rent, she had sobbed. My landlord is giving me 3 days to come up with $6,000 or I'm out on the street. Everything I own will be gone. I'll have nowhere to go. My heart had broken for her. What about your family? My mom can barely take care of herself. I have no one, Vanessa. No one but you. I had made a decision that night that would haunt me for months. I had pulled out my credit card and paid her rent. $6,000. Money I didn't really have, but charged anyway because she was my friend and she needed help. I'll pay you back, she had promised, hugging me tightly. I swear, I get my bonus next month. I'll give you everything. But the bonus never came. And neither did any repayment. After paying Claudia's rent, the requests hadn't stopped. 2 weeks later, she had needed money for car insurance. Just $500. I'll pay you back with my rent money, I promise. I had hesitated that time. Something in my gut had whispered that this was wrong, that I was being used. But Claudia had looked so desperate, so genuinely distressed, that I had ignored my instincts. Then her phone bill, her utilities, her credit card payment to avoid bankruptcy. Each time, she had had a crisis. Each time, she had promised repayment. Each time, I had said yes because I believed in our friendship, believed that she would do the same for me if our positions were reversed. The total reached $15,000 over 6 months, $15,000 that I charged on credit cards with high interest rates, $15,000 that kept me awake at night, stressed about how I would make minimum payments. $15,000 that forced me to skip meals, give up my gym membership, and move into a cheaper apartment to make ends meet. But I hadn't complained. I had made a choice to help a friend in need. I would figure out my own finances somehow. The last time I saw Claudia in person was on a Saturday in March. We had met for coffee at our usual spot, a trendy cafe downtown, where we had spent countless hours talking about our dreams and goals. She had seemed distracted that day, checking her phone constantly, barely making eye contact. When I mentioned that I was struggling with my credit card payments, she had waved dismissively. "You worry too much," she had said. "Money always works itself out. But Claudia, I really need you to start paying me back. Even small amounts would help. I'm drowning here." Her expression had hardened. "Vanessa, I said I'll pay you when I can. Stop pressuring me. You offered to help. Remember, I didn't force you." The conversation had left me feeling sick and confused. Had I been wrong to bring it up? Was I being too demanding? That night, I had texted her, "Hey, I'm sorry if I came across as pushy earlier. I'm just stressed about money. Can we talk about setting up a payment plan? Even $50 a month would help." She had read the message immediately. I could see the little red notification under my text, but she hadn't responded. The next day, I tried calling. It went straight to voicemail. I tried texting. Nothing. I sent a message on social media. My message wouldn't deliver. She had blocked me. Over the next week, I discovered she had blocked me everywhere. Phone, text, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Every platform. Every method of communication. She had erased me from her life completely. I had driven to her apartment, desperate to understand what had happened. The landlord informed me that Claudia had moved out 2 weeks earlier without leaving a forwarding address. She was gone. And so was my $15,000. The months following Claudia's disappearance were the darkest of my life. I had felt stupid, betrayed, used. How had I not seen this coming? The warning signs had been there. The constant emergencies, the vague promises, the way she deflected every conversation about repayment. I had reported the situation to the police, hoping I could file charges for fraud or theft. The officer I spoke with had been sympathetic but unhelpful. "Did you have a written agreement that she would repay you?" he asked. "No, it was between friends. I trusted her." Unfortunately, without documentation, this is considered a gift, not a loan. It's a civil matter, not criminal. You'd have to sue her in small claims court. But to sue her, I would need to find her first. And Claudia had vanished like smoke. I had fallen into depression. I stopped going out. Stopped trusting people. Stopped believing in genuine friendship. Every interaction felt tainted by suspicion. Was this person using me? What did they really want? My work performance suffered. I missed deadlines, showed up late to meetings, struggled to focus. My boss at the time, Trevor, called me into his office one afternoon. "Vanessa, what's going on with you? You're one of our best directors, but lately you seem checked out." I had almost told him everything, but pride kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to admit how badly I had been fooled, how completely I had failed to protect myself. "I'm just going through some personal stuff," I said. "I'll get it together." "See that you do," Trevor said, not unkindly. "We value you here, but we need you operating at full capacity." That conversation was my wake-up call. I couldn't let Claudia's betrayal destroy my career too. She had already taken my money and my trust. I wouldn't let her take my future. I threw myself into work with single-minded determination. I stayed late every night, volunteered for extra projects, pitched innovative ideas that impressed senior leadership. Work became my therapy, my distraction, my proof that I wasn't weak or foolish. Within 6 months, I was promoted to senior director. Within a year, I was recruited by Apex Digital Solutions to be their vice president of marketing. The company was a fast-growing startup with massive potential, but needed strategic leadership to scale properly. I took the job and transformed the company. I built partnerships with major clients, streamlined our processes, and developed a killer marketing strategy that tripled our revenue in 18 months. The board of directors was so impressed that when the CEO retired unexpectedly, they offered me the position. At 28, I became the youngest CEO in the company's history. I had rebuilt my life from the ashes of Claudia's betrayal. I had turned pain into power, humiliation into success. But I never forgot what she had done to me, and I never stopped looking for her. Finding Claudia again had been pure accident or fate, depending on how you looked at it. 3 months after I became CEO, I was reviewing applications for the senior marketing coordinator position. We had received over 300 applications, and Nicole had narrowed them down to a short list of 20 candidates. I like to personally review final candidates. It helped me understand who was joining our team, what values they brought, whether they fit our culture. I was scrolling through resumes on my tablet when I saw the name, Claudia Brennan. My heart had stopped. I clicked on her file. Same birth date, same university, same previous employer, Sterling Media Group. It was definitely her. She had applied to work at my company. The woman who had stolen $15,000 from me and vanished wanted me to give her a job. My first instinct was to reject her application immediately, delete her from our system, make her disappear the way she had made me disappear from her life. But then I paused. I sat back in my office chair and thought about it carefully. Rejecting her application would be easy but unsatisfying. She would never know why she didn't get the job. She would never face what she had done. She would just move on to another company, probably find another victim. Continue her pattern without consequences. That wasn't enough. I wanted her to see me. I wanted her to realize what I had become. I wanted her to understand exactly who she had betrayed and what it was going to cost her. Her resume is decent, but not outstanding. Her employment gap is concerning, and her references were only lukewarm. I know, I said, but I have a feeling about this one. Let's bring her in. Nicole nodded, trusting my judgment. She had no idea that this decision had nothing to do with business and everything to do with revenge. Over the next 6 weeks, I planned carefully. I researched Claudia's current life through social media profiles I accessed through a fake account. She was living in a cheap apartment across town, posting about being in between opportunities and focusing on personal growth. She shared inspirational quotes about resilience and positive thinking, presenting herself as someone overcoming adversity rather than someone fleeing consequences. I contacted her previous employer, Sterling Media, through a back channel. My college roommate, Brianna, worked in their HR department. She confirmed what I suspected. Claudia had been fired for poor performance and unprofessional behavior. She borrowed money from multiple coworkers, Brianna told me over coffee. She created a whole sob story about medical bills and family emergencies. People gave her thousands of dollars. Then she just stopped showing up to work one day, left her apartment, changed her number. Corporate banned her from ever being rehired. So it wasn't just me. Claudia had done this before. She was a professional con artist who targeted people's compassion and exploited their generosity. Learning that made me feel both better and worse. Better because I wasn't uniquely foolish. She was skilled at manipulation. Worse because I realized how calculated her entire friendship with me had been. But now I had leverage, and I knew exactly how to use it. The interview with Claudia lasted 45 minutes, and I made every second count. I asked her detailed questions about her work history, watching her struggle to explain gaps and inconsistencies. I pressed her on her departure from Sterling Media enjoying the way she squirmed while fabricating stories about creative differences with management. Nicole and Felipe asked their own questions, completely unaware of the undercurrent of tension between Claudia and me. To them, this was a routine interview. To me, it was the opening act of a carefully choreographed performance. "Let's talk about professional ethics," I said, leaning forward slightly. "Imagine a scenario. You discover a coworker has been taking credit for your work. How would you handle that situation?" Claudia's eyes flickered with uncertainty. "I would address it professionally. Have a direct conversation with the person first, then escalate to management if necessary." "Interesting," I said. "So you believe in direct confrontation rather than avoidance?" "Yes. Communication is key." I smiled. "I completely agree. I've always believed that running away from problems only makes them worse. Don't you think?" The question landed exactly as I intended. Claudia understood the double meaning. Her face flushed slightly. "Absolutely," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I glanced at Nicole and Felipe. "Do either of you have additional questions?" They shook their heads. We had covered everything in the standard interview protocol. "Excellent," I said, standing up. Everyone else stood as well. "Thank you for coming in today, Claudia. We're interviewing several qualified candidates. We'll make our decision within the week and contact you with next steps." Claudia gathered her portfolio with shaking hands. She looked like she wanted to say something to me. But Nicole was already walking her toward the door, making polite small talk about parking validation. After she left, Felipe turned to me. "What did you think?" "She's qualified on paper," I said carefully. "But something feels off. I want to do more thorough reference checks before we make a decision." "Agreed," Nicole said. "I got a strange vibe from her. She seemed nervous, more than typical interview nerves." "Let's move forward with our other candidates," I said. "I'll personally handle the reference checks for Ms. Brennan." I returned to my office and closed the door. Then I allowed myself a moment to feel the full weight of what had just happened. Claudia had sat across from me, vulnerable and desperate while I held all the power. It felt good, better than I expected, but this was just the beginning. That evening, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine and reviewed my plan. Simply rejecting Claudia's application wasn't enough. I needed her to experience consequences that matched her actions. She had taken my money, my trust, and my peace of mind. She had made me question my judgment and my worth. She had stolen from me and felt no remorse. Now it was time for her to understand what that felt like. I pulled out my phone and composed an email. "Dear Ms. Brennan, thank you for interviewing with Apex Digital Solutions today. We were impressed with your experience and qualifications. We would like to invite you to a second interview round, which will include a presentation component. Please prepare a 20-minute presentation on building trust in professional relationships. We want to see your communication skills and strategic thinking on this important topic. The presentation will be delivered to our executive team next Tuesday at 2 p.m. We look forward to seeing you again. Best regards, Nicole Santos, HR Director, Apex Digital Solutions." I sent the email from Nicole's account. I had access to all company email as CEO. Nicole would see the sent message tomorrow and might be confused. But I would explain that I had sent it on her behalf because I was working late and wanted to expedite the process. The presentation topic was carefully chosen. I wanted Claudia to research and prepare content about trust, loyalty, and professional integrity, topics she knew nothing about. I wanted her to stand in front of me and talk about values she didn't possess. The irony would be exquisite. My phone buzzed. A response from Claudia sent less than 10 minutes after my email. "Dear Ms. Santos, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm excited to move forward in the interview process. I will prepare a thorough and engaging presentation on building trust in professional relationships. I look forward to seeing you and the team next Tuesday. Best regards, Claudia Brennan. I smiled at her enthusiasm. She had no idea what was coming. Over the next few days, I prepared my own presentation, not for Claudia, but for the moment when I would reveal everything. I compiled documentation of every dollar she had taken from me. Credit card statements showing cash advances and payments to her landlord. Text messages where she promised repayment. Social media posts where she lived it up while I struggled. I also compiled evidence of her other victims. Through Brianna at Sterling Media, I obtained the names of 3 coworkers who had also loaned Claudia money that was never repaid. I reached out to them privately, explained who I was, and asked if they would be willing to provide written statements about their experiences. All 3 agreed. They had been waiting for years for someone to hold Claudia accountable. I built a case that was airtight, documented, and devastating. By the time Tuesday arrived, I was ready. Tuesday morning, I arrived at the office at 6 a.m. to set everything up. I had reserved our largest conference room, the one with glass walls that overlooked the main office floor. Every employee would be able to see inside. I arranged the furniture so Claudia would stand at the front of the room, visible to everyone. This wouldn't be private. This would be witnessed. Nicole knocked on my door at 8. Vanessa, I saw that you sent an email from my account last week about a second interview with Claudia Brennan. I would have handled that, but thank you for taking initiative. I was working late and wanted to expedite the process, I said smoothly. I hope you don't mind. I'd like to sit in on this second interview as well. Of course, you're the CEO. You can sit in on any interview you want. She paused. Do I have to say? I'm surprised you're giving this candidate so much personal attention. Her initial interview was good, but not exceptional. Call it a gut feeling, I said. Sometimes you need to dig deeper to understand someone's true character. At 1:30, I gathered the executive team for Claudia's presentation. I had invited Nicole, Felipe, our CFO Gabriella, and 2 senior managers, Kenneth and Priya. I had briefed them that this was a standard second-round interview with a presentation component. They had no idea what they were about to witness. Claudia arrived at 1:50, 10 minutes early. She wore a different dress, navy this time, and carried a laptop and a folder of materials. She looked prepared, confident, professional. I watched her through the glass walls as Nicole greeted her in reception. Claudia smiled, shook hands, made small talk. She was good at this, the performance of normalcy, the mask of competence. But I knew what was underneath. At 2 p.m. exactly, Nicole brought Claudia into the conference room. I was already seated at the head of the table, the other executives arranged on either side. Miss Brennan, I said pleasantly, welcome back. Please set up your presentation and begin whenever you're ready. Claudia's hands trembled slightly as she connected her laptop to our projection system. She took a deep breath, smoothed her dress, and turned to face us with a practiced smile. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me back. Today, I'm going to talk about building trust in professional relationships, a topic I believe is crucial for any successful business. The irony hung in the air like perfume. Claudia's presentation was polished, I had to admit. She talked about the importance of reliability, about following through on commitments, about honest communication. She cited research studies and business examples. She used slick graphics and engaging delivery techniques. She spoke about trust like someone who had studied it academically but never practiced it personally. Trust is the foundation of every professional relationship, she said, advancing to a new slide. Without trust, partnerships crumble, teams fall apart, and businesses fail. Building trust requires consistency, integrity, and accountability. I took notes on my tablet, my expression neutral. Around me, the other executives nodded along, seemingly impressed. One key component of trust is financial responsibility, Claudia continued. When we make commitments, financial or otherwise, We must honor them. Our word becomes our bond. I almost laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. Another crucial element is transparency, she said. We must be honest about our capabilities, our limitations, and our intentions. Deception, even small deceptions, erodes trust quickly and completely. She looked directly at me when she said that, as if challenging me to contradict her. I met her gaze steadily, my expression unreadable. Finally, Claudia said, wrapping up, "Trust requires vulnerability. We must be willing to admit mistakes, to apologize when we've done wrong, and to make amends. That's what separates superficial professional relationships from deep, meaningful partnerships." She clicked to her final slide. Questions? The room was silent for a moment. Then Gabriella, our CFO, raised her hand. That was very thorough. Can you give us a real-world example of a time when you had to rebuild trust after it was damaged? Claudia's smile flickered. That's a great question. In my previous role at Sterling Media, there was a miscommunication with a client about project timelines. I took responsibility for the error, worked overtime to meet the deadline, and ultimately strengthened the relationship through transparency and accountability. Another lie. I knew from Brianna that Claudia had blamed her team for the missed deadline and had taken no responsibility whatsoever. Kenneth asked a few technical questions about marketing strategy. Priya asked about her experience with specific software platforms. Claudia answered competently, relaxing slightly as the conversation moved away from trust and ethics. Then it was my turn. I have a question, I said, setting down my tablet. You've given us an excellent presentation about building trust, but I'm curious about the flip side. What happens when trust is broken? How do you handle being the person who damaged the trust? The room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at Claudia. Her face paled. That's an important question. I believe that when trust is broken, the responsible party must take full accountability. They must acknowledge the harm, apologize sincerely, and work to make amends. Make amends, I repeated slowly. What would that look like in practice? It depends on the situation, but generally it involves honest communication, genuine remorse, and concrete action to repair the damage. Concrete action, I said, like repayment if money was involved? Claudia's eyes widened. She understood where this was going. Yes, she whispered. Repayment would be appropriate. I nodded. Thank you, that's very illuminating. After Claudia's presentation, I thanked her politely and told her we would be in touch within 48 hours. She left quickly, practically running from the conference room. Through the glass walls, I watched her hurry through the office and disappear into the elevator. The other executives looked at me curiously. What did you think? Nicole asked. Very interesting, I said. Let's debrief in my office in 15 minutes. I have something I need to share with all of you. They agreed, confused but trusting my judgment. I gathered my materials and returned to my office, my heart pounding with anticipation. What I was about to do was unprecedented. It was bold. It might even be considered unprofessional by some standards, but it was also necessary. When the team assembled in my office, I closed the door and pulled up a chair. Thank you all for participating in that interview. Before we make a decision about Ms. Brennan, I need to disclose some information that's relevant to her candidacy. I had their full attention now. Nicole leaned forward. What kind of information? Personal history, I said. Claudia Brennan and I know each other. We were close friends approximately 2 years ago. The room erupted in surprised murmurs. Why didn't you say anything? Felipe asked. Because I wanted to see how she would handle the situation, whether she would be honest about our past, whether she would show any accountability for what happened between us. I pulled up the documentation on my laptop and projected it onto the screen. 2 years ago, Claudia asked me for financial help during what she described as a crisis. Over a period of 6 months, I gave her $15,000 to help with rent, bills, and other expenses. She promised to repay me. I advanced to the next slide, showing text messages between us. As you can see, she assured me repeatedly that repayment was coming. But after I asked for a payment plan, she blocked me on all platforms, moved without leaving a forwarding address, and disappeared completely. The room was silent. Gabriella looked shocked. Kenneth shook his head slowly. I did some investigation, I continued. Claudia has a pattern of this behavior. She befriended 3 coworkers at Sterling Media Group and borrowed significant sums from them as well. None of them were repaid. She was eventually fired for poor performance and unprofessional conduct. I showed statements from her former coworkers, each describing nearly identical experiences to mine. Now she's applied to work here, apparently not realizing that I'm the CEO of this company. She just gave us a presentation about building trust while owing me $15,000 that she has made no attempt to repay. Nicole rubbed her temples. Wow. This is a lot. I know, I said. And I want to be clear. I haven't brought her in for personal revenge. I've brought her in because I believe she represents everything we should not hire. Someone who lacks integrity, who exploits people's generosity, who lies without hesitation. But why put yourself through this? Priya asked gently. You could have just rejected her application from the start. Because rejection without explanation teaches nothing, I said. Claudia has spent years avoiding consequences. She hurts people and moves on. I want her to face what she's done, to understand that actions have consequences. Gabriella nodded slowly. I understand your perspective, but what exactly are you proposing we do? I took a deep breath. I'm proposing we send her a formal rejection letter that clearly states why she wasn't selected. Not just a generic "we found a better candidate" letter, but an honest explanation of why her character makes her unsuitable for employment at this company. That's risky, Kenneth said. She could claim defamation. Not if everything we state is documented and truthful, I countered. We're not making false accusations. We're explaining that we conducted a thorough background check and discovered concerning patterns of behavior that disqualify her from employment. All of which is factual and legally defensible. The team exchanged glances. Finally, Nicole spoke. I need to think about this from an HR perspective. Can we table the decision until tomorrow morning? Of course, I said. I want everyone to be comfortable with whatever we decide. They filed out of my office, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my carefully compiled evidence. I had shown my hand. Now I had to trust that my team would support me. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conference room scene in my mind. Claudia standing there, confidently delivering a presentation about trust while owing me $15,000. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. Part of me wondered if I was going too far. Was this revenge or justice? Was I being righteous or petty? But then I thought about the months after she ghosted me, the depression, the financial stress, the way I had questioned my own judgment and instincts, the way I had stopped trusting people completely. Claudia hadn't just stolen money from me. She had stolen my peace of mind, my faith in human decency, my ability to form genuine friendships without suspicion. She had taken something valuable and treated it like trash. And she had never apologized, never acknowledged wrongdoing, never attempted to make things right. No, what I was doing wasn't just revenge. It was accountability. At 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went to my home office. I drafted the rejection letter I wanted to send to Claudia, pouring 2 years of pain and anger into carefully chosen words. Dear Miss Brennan, thank you for your interest in the Senior Marketing Coordinator position at Apex Digital Solutions. After careful consideration, we have decided not to move forward with your candidacy. During our hiring process, we conduct thorough background checks on all final candidates. In your case, this process revealed a concerning pattern of unethical behavior that disqualifies you from employment at our company. Specifically, we have documented evidence that you borrowed significant sums of money from multiple individuals, including our CEO, under false pretenses, with promises of repayment that you never honored. You subsequently cut off all communication with these individuals and relocated to avoid accountability. At Apex Digital Solutions, we prioritize integrity, trustworthiness, and professional ethics. Your documented history demonstrates a fundamental lack of these qualities. We cannot in good conscience hire someone who has consistently exploited the generosity and trust of others. We wish you the best in your future endeavors and hope that you will reflect on the consequences of your actions. Sincerely, the Hiring Committee, Apex Digital Solutions. I read it over several times, editing and refining. It was harsh but fair, honest but professional. It stated facts without emotion, even though every word was powered by 2 years of suppressed anger. But I couldn't send it without my team's approval. This decision affected the company, not just me. I had to wait until morning. At 8 a.m., my phone rang. It was Nicole. "Good morning," she said. "I couldn't sleep last night thinking about the Claudia situation. Can you meet with the executive team at 9? We want to discuss it further." "Of course," I said. "I'll be there." I arrived at the office 30 minutes early and made coffee for everyone. When the team assembled in the conference room, I could tell they had all lost sleep over this too. "Okay," Nicole began. "We've all thought about this individually. Now let's talk it through as a group. Vanessa, I want to start by saying that I'm sorry you went through what you went through with Claudia. It sounds awful." "Thank you," I said quietly. "That being said," Nicole continued, "I have concerns about sending the kind of rejection letter you proposed. It opens us up to potential legal liability, and it sets a precedent of using company resources for personal grievances." My heart sank. "I understand your concerns." "Let me finish," Nicole interrupted gently. "However, after reviewing the documentation you provided, I also believe we have a legitimate business reason to disqualify this candidate. She has demonstrated poor judgment, unethical behavior, and a pattern of financial irresponsibility. Those are valid grounds for rejection." Felipe nodded. "I agree. If she had done this to someone outside the company, we could dismiss it as none of our business. But she did this to our CEO. That makes it relevant." Gabriella chimed in. "From a financial perspective, I would never want someone with this history working in any role with access to company funds or client relationships. The risk is too high." Kenneth raised his hand. "I've been thinking about the legal angle. If we state only facts that we can document, we should be protected. The truth is an absolute defense against defamation." Priya, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "I keep thinking about what message we send by hiring someone like this. What does it say about our values? About what we'll tolerate?" Everyone looked at me. I felt tears prickling behind my eyes, but forced them back. I want to be clear about something. This isn't just about punishing Claudia. It's about protecting future victims. If we hire her, she'll have access to our entire staff. What happens when she starts borrowing money from coworkers? When she creates another crisis and exploits someone else's kindness? Nicole nodded slowly. "That's a fair point. We have a responsibility to protect our employees. So what do we do?" Felipe asked. Nicole looked around the table. "I propose we send a modified rejection letter, one that's professional but clear. We'll state that during the background check process, we discovered information that makes her unsuitable for employment. We'll note specifically that we have documented evidence of financial impropriety and breach of trust in professional relationships. We won't go into extensive detail, but we'll make it clear enough that she understands why." "And if she threatens to sue?" Kenneth asked. "Then we provide the full documentation to our lawyers and let them handle it," Nicole said. "But honestly, I doubt she'll sue. People who operate the way she does don't want scrutiny. They rely on victims staying quiet." Gabriella nodded. I agree with Nicole's approach. It's firm but legally defensible. One by one, the rest of the team agreed. I felt a wave of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "All of you. Thank you for believing me and for doing the right thing." "That's what a team does," Felipe said simply. We spent the next hour crafting the perfect rejection letter. Professional, factual, and devastating. Nicole sent the rejection letter to Claudia at 2 p.m. that afternoon. I imagined her reading it, her face going white as the words sank in. I imagined her panic, her anger, her desperate attempts to salvage the situation. But I didn't hear from her. Not that day, not that week. She simply disappeared again, just like she had 2 years ago. No apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement. The difference was that this time, she was the one suffering consequences. I tried to feel satisfied. I had done what I set out to do, held her accountable, protected future victims, reclaimed my power. But instead of triumph, I felt strangely empty. Maybe that was normal. Maybe revenge, even justified revenge, never felt as good as you thought it would. Or maybe I needed more closure than a rejection letter could provide. 2 weeks later, I was working late in my office when my assistant buzzed. "Vanessa, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. Her name is Claudia Brennan." My heart stopped. "Send her in." I had 30 seconds to compose myself before Claudia walked through my door. She looked different from the polished professional who had interviewed for the job. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore jeans and a sweater, no makeup. Her eyes were red and puffy. She closed the door behind her and stood there, arms crossed defensively. "You got what you wanted," she said, her voice shaking. "Are you happy now?" I leaned back in my chair. "What do you think I wanted, Claudia? To destroy me? To ruin my career? To humiliate me?" Her voice rose. "That rejection letter was cruel. You didn't have to do that." "Cruel?" I repeated. "You think holding you accountable for stealing $15,000 is cruel? I didn't steal anything. You offered to help me." I stood up, my own anger finally breaking through. "I offered to help a friend who I thought was in crisis. You lied to me about everything. You manipulated me. You took my money with no intention of ever paying it back. Then you vanished. I was going to pay you back." "When?" I demanded. "It's been 2 years, Claudia. 2 years. You never even tried to contact me. You blocked me everywhere. You moved without telling me. How exactly were you planning to pay me back?" She had no answer. She just stood there, tears streaming down her face. "And it wasn't just me," I continued. "You did the same thing to other people at Sterling Media. This is your pattern. You find kind people, exploit their generosity, then disappear when they ask for accountability." "I was desperate," she whispered. "You don't understand. I was drowning." "So was I shouted. "Do you have any idea what you put me through? I went into debt to help you. I struggled to make rent. I ate ramen for months because I couldn't afford real food. I worked myself to exhaustion to make up for the money I gave you. I didn't know. You didn't care," I interrupted. "That's the truth, Claudia. You didn't care what happened to me as long as you got what you needed." She sank into the chair across from my desk, her face buried in her hands. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I really am sorry." I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. "Why did you come here tonight?" She looked up at me, mascara streaking her cheeks. "I don't know. I needed you to know that I'm not a bad person. I made bad choices, but I'm not evil." "I never said you were evil," I said quietly. "But you hurt people, Claudia. A lot of people. And you never tried to make it right." "How could I? I didn't have the money." "You could have apologized." "You could have said, 'I can't pay you back right now, but I acknowledge what I owe and I'll make it right someday.' You could have shown basic human decency." She was silent for a long moment. "You're right," she finally said. "I should have. I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. So I ran instead of facing what I'd done. And now I'm facing it." Claudia and I sat in my office for 2 hours that night, having the conversation we should have had 2 years ago. She told me about her childhood, about growing up with a mother who was addicted to painkillers, about learning to survive by manipulating people's sympathy. She told me about accumulating debt trying to maintain an image of success she couldn't afford. She told me about the shame that came from constantly borrowing, constantly lying, constantly running. "I thought if I could just get enough money together, I could pay everyone back and start fresh," she said. But it kept spiraling. The more I borrowed, the more I needed to borrow to cover the first debts. It became this terrible cycle. "You should have been honest with me," I said. "If you had told me you were struggling with debt, I might have helped you find resources. Credit counseling, financial planning, something legitimate. I know, but admitting I needed help felt like admitting I was a failure." "Everyone needs help sometimes," I said, "but there's a difference between asking for help and manipulating people." She nodded miserably. "I see that now. Too late, but I see it." I studied her face, trying to determine if this remorse was genuine or just another manipulation. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to think that people could change. But I had learned the hard way that wanting something to be true didn't make it so. "What do you want from me, Claudia?" I asked directly. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe just forgiveness? Understanding? I know I don't deserve it, but I want you to know that I regret what I did. Every day, you were a good friend to me, and I threw that away." "You did," I agreed, "and you can't get it back. That friendship is gone." "I know, but," I continued, slowly, "you can still do the right thing going forward. You can stop running. You can face your debts honestly. You can get help for whatever issues are driving this behavior." "How?" she asked helplessly. "I'm completely broke. I have no job, no references, no way to pay anyone back. That rejection letter you sent will follow me everywhere." "We sent it only to you," I said. "We didn't broadcast it publicly. If you apply to other companies and they call us for references, we'll simply say that you weren't a good fit for the position. We won't elaborate unless legally required to." She looked surprised. "Really? Really? Despite what you think, I'm not trying to destroy your life. I just wanted you to face consequences for once." "I am," she said quietly. "Believe me." I pulled out my checkbook. Yes, I still kept one for situations like this, and wrote out a check for $500. I slid it across the desk. "What's this?" she asked. "Money for a financial counselor. There's a nonprofit downtown that helps people with debt management. They charge on a sliding scale. This should cover several sessions." Claudia stared at the check like it might bite her. "Why would you help me after everything I did?" "Because I'm not you," I said simply. "I believe people deserve second chances, even when they don't deserve forgiveness. But this is the only help you'll ever get from me. After tonight, we're done. Understood?" "Understood," she whispered, taking the check with trembling hands. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, Vanessa, you deserved better than what I gave you. You're a good person. I hope you know that." "I do now," I said. After she left, I sat alone in my office, feeling drained but somehow lighter. The conversation hadn't given me the satisfaction I thought I wanted, but it had given me something more valuable: closure. The weeks following Claudia's visit were strange. I found myself thinking about her more than I expected, not with anger anymore, but with something closer to pity. She was 30 years old and completely lost, drowning in debts and lies of her own making. I had been lucky. Despite her betrayal, I had skills, education, family support, and opportunities. I had been able to rebuild. But what if I hadn't? What if one person's betrayal had derailed my entire life? The thought made me uncomfortable. It suggested that success and failure sometimes came down to luck as much as effort. That made the world feel more random, more unfair. But I couldn't dwell on that. I had a company to run. Montgomery Capital continued to thrive. We closed several major deals in the following months and expanded our team. I hired talented people who shared our values: integrity, transparency, hard work. One of those hires was a young woman named Alicia Stevens, a recent college graduate with impressive credentials, but limited experience. She reminded me of myself at that age: ambitious, idealistic, eager to prove herself. During her interview, I asked her the same question I had asked Claudia. What do you think is the most important quality in a professional relationship? Without hesitation, she answered, trust, because without trust, everything else falls apart. Exactly, I had said, and hired her on the spot. Alicia became my assistant, and I took her under my wing. I mentored her the way I wished someone had mentored me. I taught her about business strategy, about professional relationships, about protecting herself while still being generous. One day, over coffee, she asked me about the scar on my palm, a small mark from where I had cut myself opening a package during my poorest days, when I couldn't afford nice scissors and made do with a butter knife. What happened there? She asked. Just an accident, I said. Then, after a moment, actually, it's a reminder. Of what? Of a time in my life when I trusted the wrong person and paid dearly for it. Now I look at this scar and remember that scars heal, but the lessons stay. Alicia nodded thoughtfully. Did you ever get closure with that person? Eventually, I said, though not in the way I expected. I told her an abbreviated version of the story, leaving out names and some details, but sharing the essence of what happened. Alicia listened with wide eyes. Wow, she said, when I finished. That must have been so hard. But look at you now. You built this incredible company. You're successful. You clearly didn't let it destroy you. No, I agreed, but it changed me. I'm more careful now, more guarded. Sometimes I wonder if that's good or bad. Maybe it's just realistic, Alicia suggested. Being careful doesn't mean you're cynical. It just means you're wise. Her words stayed with me. Maybe she was right. Maybe wisdom did come from being hurt and learning from it. Maybe my experience with Claudia had made me a better leader, a better judge of character, a better protector of the people who worked for me. 6 months after the rejection letter, I received an unexpected package at the office. It was small, wrapped in brown paper, with no return address. My assistant, Alicia, brought it to me with a concerned expression. Should I call security? We usually screen packages. It's fine, I said, recognizing Claudia's handwriting on the label. I know who it's from. Inside was an envelope and a stack of money orders totaling $1,000. The envelope contained a handwritten letter. Dear Vanessa, I know this doesn't come close to what I owe you, but it's a start. I got a job. Nothing glamorous, just retail management, and I've been saving every extra dollar. I'm also working with the financial counselor you recommended. She's helping me create a debt repayment plan. I can't pay you everything at once. It will take years. But I'm committing to sending you a payment every month, even if it's small. I owe you $15,000, and I will repay every cent. More importantly, I owe you an apology that I should have given you 2 years ago. What I did was wrong, cruel, inexcusable. I took advantage of your kindness and treated your friendship like it was worthless. You deserved so much better. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not even asking you to. I'm just letting you know that I'm trying to be a better person. I'm facing my mistakes instead of running from them. It's terrifying and humiliating, but it's also the first time in my life that I feel like maybe I have a chance at becoming someone I can be proud of. Thank you for giving me that chance, even though you had every reason not to. Claudia, I read the letter twice, then set it down carefully. $1,000. It would take her 15 months to repay me at this rate, longer if she missed payments. Part of me wanted to reject the money, to tell her I didn't need it anymore and she should keep it for herself. But that would rob her of the opportunity to actually repay her debt, to prove to herself that she could follow through on a commitment. So instead, I deposited the money orders and sent her a brief email. Payment received. Thank you for honoring your commitment. Every month after that, like clockwork, another payment arrived. Sometimes it was $1,000. Sometimes it was only $300, but it always came. I created a spreadsheet to track the payments, not because I needed the money. My salary as CEO was more than comfortable, but because I wanted to see if Claudia would actually follow through for once in her life. Months turned into a year. The balance slowly decreased. $14,000, $12,500, $11,000. I found myself quietly rooting for her, hoping she would make it, hoping she would prove that people really could change. Meanwhile, Apex Digital Solutions continued to grow. We expanded into new markets, hired more employees, and increased our revenue by 40%. Industry publications started writing about us as one of the most innovative companies in the digital space. I was invited to speak at conferences, to sit on panels, to share my insights on leadership and business strategy. People looked up to me. They asked for my advice. They wanted to know the secret to my success. The secret I wanted to tell them was failure, betrayal, pain, loss. The secret was being broken and choosing to rebuild yourself stronger. But that wasn't the kind of answer people wanted at business conferences. So instead, I talked about strategic planning, team building, and market analysis. The real lessons, the ones about trust and resilience and the cost of giving people second chances, those I kept private. 18 months after sending the rejection letter, I received an invitation to speak at a women's entrepreneurship summit. The event was being organized by a nonprofit that helped women start businesses, particularly women from disadvantaged backgrounds. They wanted me to talk about overcoming obstacles and building success from scratch. I almost declined. I was busy, and I didn't particularly enjoy public speaking. But then I read the organizer's email more carefully. The keynote speaker would be discussing financial literacy and debt management. Her name was Kelly Morrison, and she was described as a financial counselor who helps people escape cycles of debt and manipulation. Kelly Morrison, the counselor I had suggested to Claudia. Curiosity got the better of me. I accepted the invitation. The summit was held at a downtown convention center on a Saturday in October. 300 women attended. Entrepreneurs, aspiring business owners, students, and professionals. The energy in the room was electric, hopeful, inspiring. I gave my speech in the morning. I talked about starting Apex Digital Solutions, about the challenges of leading a company as a young woman, about the importance of financial independence and professional autonomy. I didn't mention Claudia by name, but I did share a story. Early in my career, I learned a hard lesson about trust and boundaries. I helped a friend financially, expecting nothing in return except basic honesty and respect. Instead, I was betrayed. That experience devastated me temporarily, but it also taught me crucial lessons about protecting myself, about documentation, about the difference between generosity and enabling. The audience nodded. Many women came up to me afterward with similar stories, friends or family members who had taken advantage of their kindness. "How did you move past it?" one young woman asked. "I'm still so angry at the person who betrayed me." "Anger is valid," I told her, "but at some point, you have to decide whether you want to carry that anger or set it down." For me, getting justice helped. Holding the person accountable made it easier to let go. But everyone's path is different. After lunch, Kelly Morrison took the stage for her keynote address. She was in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair and warm eyes that crinkled when she smiled. "I'm going to tell you about my work," she began. "I help people who have gotten themselves into impossible financial situations. People who have made terrible choices, accumulated crushing debt, and feel like there's no way out." She talked about the psychology of debt, about how shame keeps people trapped in destructive cycles, about how facing your mistakes is the first step toward freedom. "I want to share a success story," she said. A year ago, a woman came to me drowning in debt. She owed multiple people significant amounts of money. She had lost jobs, burned bridges, destroyed relationships. She was living in a tiny apartment, working retail, barely surviving. My heart began to race. I had a feeling I knew where this was going. The first time we met, Kelly continued, she told me she was a bad person who didn't deserve help. She said she had manipulated people, lied to them, stolen from them. She was convinced she was irredeemable. The room was silent, everyone hanging on Kelly's words. But here's what I told her. Your past doesn't define your future unless you let it. You can't change what you've done, but you can change what you do next. Kelly smiled. That woman is here today. She's been paying back her debts consistently for 18 months. She's working 2 jobs. She's going to community college. She's rebuilding her life one day at a time. And she asked me to share her story because she wants other people to know that change is possible. I looked around the room, searching the faces in the crowd, and there, in the back row, I saw her, Claudia. Claudia looked different again. Her hair was shorter, natural instead of the highlighted blonde I remembered. She wore simple clothes, jeans and a sweater, and no makeup. She looked tired, but healthier somehow, like she was finally sleeping through the night. Our eyes met across the crowded room. She gave me a small, uncertain smile. I nodded back. After Kelly's speech, I made my way through the crowd toward Claudia. She stood up when she saw me approaching, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi," I replied. "I didn't expect to see you here. Kelly invited me. She thought it might help me to see other women building their lives. I didn't know you would be speaking, or I would have. I don't know, warned you? Hidden. Despite everything, I almost smiled. You don't need to hide from me. No? No. You're doing the work. You're paying back what you owe. That's what matters." Claudia's eyes filled with tears. "I'm trying. God, I'm trying so hard. Some days I want to quit, to run away again, to disappear. But then I remember how that felt, the shame, the fear, the constant looking over my shoulder. I don't want to be that person anymore." "Then don't be," I said simply. We stood there awkwardly. For a moment, 2 people who had once been close friends and were now something else entirely. Not friends, but not quite enemies either. "Can we get coffee?" Claudia asked. "I mean, if you have time, I understand if you don't." "I have time," I said. We left the convention center and walked to a nearby cafe. Not the trendy place we used to frequent, but a small, quiet spot with mismatched furniture and strong coffee. Over lattes, Claudia told me about her life. The retail management job at a clothing store. The night classes she was taking in business administration. The tiny studio apartment she rented on the edge of town. The second job she worked on weekends, doing freelance social media management. "I'm exhausted all the time," she admitted. "But I'm also proud. For the first time in my life, I'm earning everything I have. No one is giving me money. No one is paying my bills. It's all me. That's worth being proud of," I said. "I still have $9,500 left to pay you," she said. "At my current rate, I'll be done in about 10 months. Unless something happens and I have to slow down payments. But I will finish, Vanessa. I promise." "I believe you," I said, and surprisingly, I meant it. Claudia stirred her coffee, not drinking it. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why did you give me that check for the financial counselor? After everything I did, why help me at all?" I thought about it carefully. Because I don't think people are beyond redemption. You made terrible choices and you hurt me badly, but I didn't want to be the person who gives up on everyone. That would have made me bitter and closed off. I didn't want that for myself. So it was for you, not for me? "Maybe a little of both," I admitted. Claudia smiled sadly. "You're a better person than I am. I'm just a person who learned hard lessons and chose how to respond to them. You're doing the same thing now." We talked for another hour, carefully navigating the territory between past and present. It wasn't comfortable exactly, but it was real. No more lies, no more manipulation. Just two women trying to make sense of how friendship could turn into betrayal and whether anything could be salvaged from the wreckage. As we were leaving, Claudia stopped me. "Thank you for giving me the chance to make this right. Most people wouldn't have." "Most people don't get the opportunity," I said. "Consider yourself lucky that I ended up in a position where I could enforce accountability." She laughed, a real laugh, and for a moment I glimpsed the friend I had once known. Lucky. Right. That's one way to put it. Over the following months, I thought a lot about justice, revenge, and redemption. The revenge I had planned, the public humiliation, the rejection letter, the exposure of Claudia's pattern of behavior had felt satisfying in the moment. It had been cathartic to finally hold her accountable, to make her face what she had done. But the real satisfaction came from what happened after, from watching Claudia actually change, actually put in the work to become someone better, from seeing her struggle and persist and slowly rebuild a life based on honesty instead of manipulation. That felt like real justice. Not the dramatic confrontation I had orchestrated, but the quiet, daily choice to do better. I wondered if I could have achieved the same result without the confrontation. If I had simply called her, told her I knew she was applying to jobs and offered to help her get counseling, would she have accepted? Or did she need the shock of being caught, the humiliation of exposure, to finally hit bottom and decide to change? I didn't know. Maybe I never would. What I did know was that my own healing had come not from revenge, but from rebuilding, from creating a company that reflected my values, from mentoring younger women like Alicia, from using my experience to become wiser, more discerning, but not cynical. Apex Digital Solutions continued to thrive. We hit 10 million in revenue that year. We expanded to a second office location. We were named one of the best companies to work for by a major business publication. People asked me about my leadership philosophy. I told them, trust, but verify. Be generous, but protect yourself. Give second chances, but enforce consequences for bad behavior. Build a culture where people feel valued, but also held accountable. Those principles came directly from my experience with Claudia. She had taught me, through pain and betrayal, how to be a better leader. One evening, I was working late when Alicia knocked on my office door. "Do you have a minute?" "Always," I said, gesturing for her to sit. "I wanted to tell you something," she said, fidgeting with her hands. "My college roommate asked me for a loan, $5,000. She says it's an emergency, that she'll pay me back in 3 months. And?" I prompted. "And I'm worried. We're friends, but not super close friends, and $5,000 is a lot of money for me. But I also don't want to seem selfish or untrusting." I leaned back in my chair. "Tell me about your roommate." "What's the emergency?" Alicia explained her roommate had been living beyond her means, racking up credit card debt, and was now facing late fees and collection calls. She wanted Alicia's loan to pay off one card so she could stop the collection calls. "So it's not really an emergency," I said. "It's a consequence of her own poor financial decisions." "I guess so. But she's really stressed about it, and if you give her the money, what happens? Does she learn to budget better? Does she change her spending habits? Or does she just get temporary relief while the underlying problem continues?" Alicia was quiet for a moment. "Probably the last one." "Probably," I agreed. "So here's what I learned the hard way. You can't save people from themselves. You can offer resources, suggest solutions, provide emotional support. But you can't solve their problems for them, especially when those problems stem from their own choices. So I should say no? I think you should offer alternatives. Maybe help her find a credit counselor or a debt consolidation program. Maybe offer to sit down with her and help her create a budget. But don't give her $5,000 unless you're prepared to never see it again." Alicia nodded slowly. "That makes sense. Thank you. One more thing," I added. If she gets angry at you for not giving her the money, or tries to guilt you, or accuses you of being a bad friend, that tells you everything you need to know about her character. Real friends respect boundaries. Did someone do that to you? Alicia asked. Yes, I said, and I learned from it. The final payment from Claudia arrives 10 months later, right on schedule. It was a money order for $1,500, bringing her total repayment to exactly $15,000. With it came a brief note. Vanessa, this is the last payment. I did it. I can't quite believe it, but I did it. Thank you for holding me accountable. Thank you for not giving up on the possibility that I could change. And thank you for being the kind of person who believes in second chances even when they're not deserved. I'm not asking to be friends again. I know that ship has sailed, but I hope someday you can think of me without anger or pain. I hope I've earned at least that much. With gratitude, Claudia. I deposited the final payment and updated my spreadsheet. Balance $0.00. It was done. I sat in my office, holding the note, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Relief that the debt was finally repaid. Pride that Claudia had actually followed through. And something else, a sense of peace, of closure, of a chapter finally ending. I drafted a response. Claudia, congratulations on completing your payment plan. That took commitment and sacrifice, and you should be proud of yourself. You're right that we won't be friends again. Too much has happened, and trust once broken is nearly impossible to fully rebuild. But I don't think of you with anger anymore. I think of you as someone who made serious mistakes and then did the hard work to make amends. That's more than most people do. I wish you well in your future endeavors. May you continue choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. Vanessa, I sent the email, then closed the spreadsheet file. I wouldn't need it anymore. That evening, I went home to the apartment I had bought myself, a beautiful space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I poured a glass of wine and stood by the window, watching the lights flicker on as darkness fell. I thought about the woman I had been 2 years ago, struggling with debt and heartbreak, questioning her judgment and her worth. I thought about the CEO I had become, confident and successful, building something meaningful. The journey between those two versions of myself had been painful, but it had also been necessary. Claudia had betrayed me, used me, abandoned me. But in doing so, she had also freed me from naivety, from blind trust, from the belief that being good meant being a doormat. She had taught me to protect myself, to verify before trusting, to enforce boundaries, to demand accountability. Those lessons had made me a better leader, a better businesswoman, a better judge of character. They had given me the tools to build a company based on integrity and mutual respect. So in a strange way, I owed her. Not gratitude, exactly, but acknowledgement that sometimes our greatest teachers are the people who hurt us most. My phone buzzed. A text from Alicia. Meeting with roommate went well. I offered to help her find resources instead of giving her money. She actually seemed relieved. Thank you for the advice. I smiled. You're welcome. Proud of you for setting boundaries. The cycle continued. I had learned from pain. Now I could teach others to protect themselves. They would teach the next generation. Slowly, maybe, we could create a culture where boundaries were respected, where accountability was expected, where people took responsibility for their actions. It wouldn't happen overnight. People like the old Claudia would always exist. People who took advantage, who manipulated, who exploited kindness. But people like me would exist too. People who learned from betrayal and chose to become stronger, wiser, more discerning. People who demanded accountability and enforced consequences. People who knew that real strength wasn't about never being hurt. It was about healing from hurt and refusing to let it define you. A year passed, then another. Apex Digital Solutions grew beyond my wildest expectations. We expanded to 3 cities, employed over 200 people, and hit 50 million in annual revenue. I was featured in business magazines, invited to speak at major conferences, and recognized as one of the top young CEOs in the country. My success was built on the ashes of Claudia's betrayal. Every lesson I learned from that experience informed how I ran my company, how I treated my employees, how I made decisions. I created a company culture where integrity was non-negotiable, where people were valued but also held accountable, where generosity was encouraged but boundaries were respected, where second chances were possible but first chances weren't taken for granted. One afternoon, I received a LinkedIn message from an unfamiliar name, Claudia Harrison. It took me a moment to realize she had changed her last name back to her mother's maiden name, probably trying to distance herself from her past reputation. The message read, "Hi Vanessa, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I wanted to let you know that I graduated from community college last month with an associate degree in business administration. I'm starting a bachelor's program in the fall. I also wanted to share something else. I'm working with a local nonprofit that helps women escape cycles of debt and financial abuse. I volunteer there twice a week, sharing my story and helping women understand how to protect themselves from people like I used to be. I'm trying to turn my mistakes into something useful, to prevent other people from hurting the way I hurt people. You probably don't care about any of this, but I wanted you to know that the accountability you forced on me changed my life. If you had let me disappear quietly, I would still be running, still hurting people, still lying to myself about who I was. So thank you for being strong enough to hold me accountable when no one else did." Claudia, I read the message 3 times. Part of me was skeptical. Was this real growth or just another performance? Was she genuinely trying to help others or just rebuilding her reputation? But then I remembered Kelly Morrison's words at the Entrepreneurship Summit. Your past doesn't define your future unless you let it. If I kept doubting Claudia forever, if I never believed she could change, then I was letting the past define both of our futures. I wrote back, "Claudia, congratulations on your graduation. That's a significant achievement. I'm glad to hear you're using your experience to help others. That's the best form of restitution, preventing future harm rather than just repairing past damage. I do care about this, not because we're friends or because I've forgotten what happened, but because I believe in growth, in accountability, in the possibility of redemption through action rather than just words. Keep doing the work. Keep being honest. Keep helping others avoid the mistakes you made. That's how you honor the people you hurt." Vanessa, after I sent the message, I closed LinkedIn and returned to work. I had a board meeting in an hour, then dinner with potential investors, then a conference call with our West Coast team. My life was full, purposeful, successful. I had built something real and valuable. I had overcome betrayal and emerged stronger. And somewhere across town, Claudia was doing the same, rebuilding her life, helping others, trying to become someone she could be proud of. We would never be friends again. That door was closed permanently, locked and sealed. Too much had happened. Too much trust had been broken. But we had both grown from the experience. We had both learned. We had both changed. That, I realized, was the best possible outcome. Not reconciliation, but parallel growth. Not forgiveness, but understanding. Not friendship, but mutual respect earned through hard work and genuine transformation. 5 years after the rejection letter incident, I was invited to give the commencement speech at my alma mater, Harvard Business School. It was a tremendous honor, and I spent weeks preparing my remarks. I wanted to give the graduating class something meaningful, something more than generic platitudes about success and determination. On the morning of the ceremony, I stood backstage in my cap and gown, nervous despite years of public speaking experience. This was different. These were students at the beginning of their careers, full of hope and ambition and idealism. I wanted to tell them the truth about what they would face. When my name was called, I walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. The graduates and their families filled the auditorium, thousands of faces looking up at me expectantly. I took a deep breath and began. 5 years ago, I was betrayed by someone I trusted completely. That person took advantage of my generosity, stole from me, and disappeared without remorse. The experience broke me. It shattered my faith in people, my trust in my own judgment, my belief in fundamental human decency. The audience was silent, surprised by my blunt opening. I tell you this not for sympathy, but because betrayal is part of the human experience. Many of you will face it in your careers: a business partner who steals your ideas, a colleague who takes credit for your work, a friend who exploits your kindness. I paused, making eye contact with students in the front rows. When betrayal happens, you will have choices. You can become bitter and closed off, never trusting anyone again. You can seek revenge that destroys both your enemy and yourself. Or you can do something harder. You can hold people accountable while still believing in the possibility of goodness. I told them about building Apex Digital Solutions on principles learned from pain, about creating a culture of accountability and integrity, about the difference between being naive and being hopeful. The person who betrayed me eventually made amends. It took years. It required hard work, honesty, and genuine transformation. I didn't forgive easily, and I never forgot what happened. But I did acknowledge her growth. I did recognize her effort to become better. I looked out at the sea of faces. Here's what I want you to understand. Accountability and compassion are not opposites. You can hold people responsible for their actions while still believing they can change. You can enforce consequences while leaving room for redemption. You can protect yourself without becoming cruel. I shared practical advice about documentation, about setting boundaries, about the importance of legal protection in business partnerships. I talked about the difference between helping and enabling, between generosity and foolishness. Build companies where people are valued but also held accountable, I said. Create cultures where mistakes can be acknowledged and corrected. Be leaders who are both strong and fair. As I concluded my speech, I said, the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so successful, so fulfilled, so genuinely happy that the person who hurt you becomes irrelevant to your story. Build a life so good that betrayal becomes just a chapter, not the whole book. The audience erupted in applause. Students stood, cheering. I saw tears on some faces, recognition on others. After the ceremony, dozens of students approached me with their own stories of betrayal and recovery. A young woman told me about a friend who had stolen her business idea. A man described his father embezzling from the family company. A non-binary student shared how their former partner had sabotaged their graduate school applications. To each person, I said the same thing. Your pain is valid. Your anger is justified, but don't let it consume you. Use it as fuel to build something better. That evening, I had dinner with some former professors who wanted to celebrate my success. We ate at an upscale restaurant near campus, reminiscing about my student days. You were always ambitious, Professor Wells said. But I remember you being softer back then, more trusting. I was, I agreed. Experience has a way of hardening you, or making you wiser, Professor Chen countered. There's a difference between hard and wise. I thought about that. Maybe. I like to think I'm still capable of trust. I'm just more discerning about who receives it. That's wisdom, Professor Wells said. Knowing the difference between an open heart and an open wound. After dinner, I walked through campus alone. It was a beautiful spring evening, the air fragrant with blooming flowers. Students hurried past, their faces bright with youth and possibility. I felt oddly nostalgic. Not for who I had been. That naive, trusting version of myself felt like a different person entirely. But for the simplicity of that time, before I knew how much betrayal could hurt, before I understood that not everyone deserved my trust, my phone buzzed. An email from an unfamiliar address with the subject line, "Congratulations on your speech." I opened it, Vanessa, I watched your commencement speech online. They live streamed it, which I'm sure you know. I just wanted to say that your words meant everything to me. You could have used that platform to condemn people who make mistakes. You could have preached about never giving second chances. Instead, you talked about accountability and compassion, about consequences and redemption. You've become exactly the kind of leader the world needs. Strong but not cruel, wise but not cynical, protective but not closed off. I know I'm one of the reasons you had to learn those lessons the hard way. I know I'm part of why you developed that harder shell. That will always be my biggest regret, that I damaged your ability to trust freely. But I'm grateful you didn't let me destroy your capacity for compassion, that you chose wisdom over bitterness. I won't contact you again after this. I just wanted you to know that your story, our story really, has helped me become someone better. And I hope it helps others too. With deep respect, Claudia. I sat on a bench and read the email again and again. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I cried. Not from pain or anger, but from release. From finally letting go of the last remnants of hurt and betrayal. From accepting that what happened to me had shaped me, but didn't define me. Claudia was right about one thing. Our story, the betrayal, the revenge, the accountability, the redemption, had become something larger than both of us. It was a lesson about human nature, about consequences, about the possibility of growth, even from terrible mistakes. I deleted her email, not out of anger, but because I didn't need to keep reading it, didn't need to hold on to that connection anymore. It was time to let go completely. 2 more years passed. Apex Digital Solutions hit $100 million in revenue. We went public, which meant I was now on record as a successful entrepreneur with a company valued at over $500 million. The IPO made me wealthy beyond anything I had imagined as a struggling assistant director paying my friends' bills. I used my wealth intentionally. I created a scholarship fund for women in business, prioritizing those from disadvantaged backgrounds. I invested in nonprofits that provided financial literacy education. I started a program that offered interest-free loans to people working to escape debt, with mandatory financial counseling and strict accountability measures. That last program was inspired by Claudia, though I never said so publicly. I also continued mentoring young professionals, particularly women, who reminded me of my younger self. I taught them about boundaries, about documentation, about protecting themselves while still being generous. One of my mentees was Alicia, who had grown into an exceptional professional. She was now Director of Operations at Apex Digital Solutions and was being considered for VP. "You've taught me so much," she said during one of our regular check-ins. "Not just about business, but about being strong without being hard. About having boundaries without being closed off. You had that in you already," I said. "I just helped you recognize it." "Did someone mentor you that way?" she asked. "No," I admitted. "I learned through painful experience. But I want your generation to have an easier path." "Not too easy, though," Alicia said with a smile. "Some lessons have to be learned through experience." She was right. You couldn't teach someone to be discerning just by telling them to be careful. They had to experience betrayal, process it, and choose how to respond. The best you could do was provide support and guidance when they needed it. Around this time, I received a letter through my company's main address. It had been forwarded from several previous locations, taking months to reach me. The return address was from a women's correctional facility upstate. My heart sank. Had Claudia been arrested? Had she fallen back into old patterns? But when I opened the letter, I discovered it wasn't from Claudia at all. It was from a woman named Teresa, who had been serving time for fraud, specifically for running financial scams that exploited people's trust. "Dear Ms. Torres, you don't know me, but I know your story. Claudia Harrison volunteers here teaching financial literacy classes to inmates. She shared, with permission, about what she did to you and how you held her accountable. Her story changed my life. I've spent 15 years running cons, hurting people, taking advantage of kindness. I always told myself I had to do it to survive, that I had no choice, that my victims could afford to lose the money. But hearing Claudia's story made me realize I was just like her, someone who caused real harm to real people and refused to take responsibility. I'm writing to thank you, not just for what you did for Claudia, but for what your actions ultimately did for me. By holding her accountable, by demanding that she face what she'd done and make amends, you showed her, and through her, me, that change is possible but requires genuine effort. I'm taking responsibility for my crimes. I'm working with my victim's advocate to try to provide restitution. I'm getting the help I need to understand why I operated this way. It's hard. Some days I want to give up. But then I think about Claudia's story, how she paid back every dollar, how she rebuilt her life, how she turned her mistakes into something useful by helping others. If she could do it, maybe I can too. Thank you for believing that people can change while also demanding that they do the work to prove it. Sincerely, Teresa M. I read the letter 3 times, overwhelmed by unexpected emotion. My confrontation with Claudia hadn't just affected the two of us. It had rippled outward, influencing people I would never meet in ways I could never have predicted. That's when I truly understood. Justice isn't just about punishment or revenge. It's about creating accountability that has the power to transform not just the person who caused harm, but everyone touched by that harm. On the 10th anniversary of founding Apex Digital Solutions, we threw a massive celebration. The event was held at an upscale venue downtown, with over 500 guests, employees, investors, clients, partners, and friends. It was a testament to how far we had come, how much we had built together. I gave a speech thanking everyone who had contributed to our success. I talked about our values: integrity, accountability, innovation, compassion. I shared stories of challenges we had overcome and goals we had achieved. Near the end of my speech, I said, 10 years ago, I was in a very different place. I had been betrayed, hurt, and financially devastated. I could have let that experience destroy me. Instead, I used it as fuel to build something meaningful. This company exists because I refused to let betrayal define me. The crowd applauded. They knew the broad strokes of my story. Everyone in the business world did by that point. But they didn't know all the details. And I had never publicly named Claudia. After the speech, I mingled with guests, accepting congratulations and well wishes. Around 11 p.m., my assistant found me. Vanessa, there's someone at the door who says she's an old friend. Security won't let her in without your approval. Her name is Claudia Harrison. My heart stopped. She's here? Should I tell security to turn her away? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to say yes, to maintain the boundary I had carefully established. But curiosity won. Let her in, I said. But tell her I can only give her 5 minutes. Claudia appeared a few minutes later, looking uncomfortable in a simple black dress. She had aged. We both had. But she looked healthy, stable, grounded. We found a quiet corner away from the party noise. I'm sorry for crashing, she said immediately. I know I'm not on the guest list. I saw the news about the anniversary, and I wanted to congratulate you in person, to see what you built. Thank you, I said. How are you? Good. Really good, actually. I finished my bachelor's degree last year. I'm working as a financial advisor now, helping people manage debt and build savings. It's ironic, I know, but it turns out I'm good at it when I'm being honest. I'm glad, I said, and meant it. I got your letter about the scholarship fund, she continued. The one for women trying to escape cycles of financial abuse. That's exactly the kind of thing I wish had existed when I needed it. I hadn't realized she knew about that. It's important work. It is, she agreed. And I want to contribute. I know I'm not wealthy, but I'd like to donate $1,000 to the fund. As a way of giving back, I was genuinely surprised. Claudia, that's generous, but you don't have to. I want to, she interrupted. You held me accountable when no one else did. You believed I could change even when I didn't believe it myself. This is my way of honoring that. We stood there for a moment, two people who had traveled very different paths from the same starting point. Can I ask you something? Claudia said. Do you ever regret being so harsh with me? The public rejection, the exposure, all of it? I considered the question carefully. No, I said finally, because anything less wouldn't have worked. You needed to hit bottom. You needed consequences that actually hurt. Otherwise, you would have kept running, kept hurting people. You're right, she said. I hated you for it at the time. I thought you were cruel, but now I understand that you gave me the greatest gift anyone could. You forced me to face myself. We're not friends, I said, making it clear. We never will be again. I know, she said, and I don't expect that. I just wanted you to know that your strength, your refusal to let me off the hook, saved my life. Literally. I was heading down a path that would have ended with prison or worse. She pulled out a business card and handed it to me. If anyone ever needs a financial advisor who truly understands what it's like to climb out of debt, to face their mistakes, to rebuild from nothing, send them my way. I'll help them for free if they can't afford my rates. I took the card. I might do that. Claudia smiled, a genuine smile that reminded me briefly of the friend I had once known. Thank you, Vanessa, for everything, even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. Then she walked away, back through the party and out into the night, and I knew that was the last time I would see her. But it was the right ending. Not a reconciliation, not a fairy tale resolution, but something better. Mutual respect, acknowledgement of growth, and peace with the past. I returned to my celebration, to my company, to the life I had built from the ashes of betrayal. And I finally felt free.